Going live. Here we go. Waiting, seeing who's coming. Excited to be here this morning. Adam, good morning. See you, man. All right. Good morning, John. That's funny to me. Oh, I understand why. I'm reading my... Oh, good morning, Leanne. Good morning, Michaela. Good afternoon, Estelle. Good morning, Kim. Good morning, Tammy. So good. Awesome. Gotta move that up a little bit. All right. Good morning, Phyllis. Good morning, Martha. Good morning, Shanna. Shanna, have you gotten back to work yet? I know you got some more time, but time has passed. Good morning, Amanda Rand. I think it said hella. Hella, not hello. Oh, now it says hello. Did you fix it? There it is. Good morning, Tommy, Judy. Good morning, Lori. Good morning. All right, so good to have you guys on this morning. Man. You know, I thought, here's a funny thing. I thought about doing a, we'll see how you respond to this. Amanda. I thought about like pre-recording this thing because, man, like, I don't know. I think I saw like a Bible study where there was a pre-recording of, you know, it was somebody actually doing something very similar to this. Maybe I dreamed it. I don't even know who it was. But it was a Bible study, and they were doing the same thing that I'm doing, but they had it pre-recorded. I'm like, man, it's so much more polished. You know, good camera, quality picture, very, you know, a lot less good mornings, and all that. And I was like, man, I could pre-record it, put it on, and you guys would probably get more out of it, but I wouldn't. And so I'm not going to pre-record it. Maybe I'll do another thing that I'll pre-record. Good morning, Matt from the farm. Beautiful sunny day, huh? Blazing satellite internet speed. I think that's a wisecrack. It is cold in this country. That's what I'm hearing. It's cold in this country everywhere, right? It is, man, it's bitter cold. I mean, here it's cold, and in San Diego, and by cold, it's like dropping into the 40s. I think in Spokane, I saw it was like dropping into the ones. So just bitter cold. Yes, John, not the same, right? Yeah, live is just, there's just something about it. Here's another, man, I got all these thoughts. Let me share a couple as we're waiting here. So I've also had this thought, I don't know if you know this, but I don't think you have the button, but if you do, if you go live on your personal page, there's an option that people can go live with you, and you can have like two people at the same time going live, and so I could have a conversation and actually see somebody there. Good morning, Brad. And so that to me seems kind of fun and cool, where it could just be me and somebody else interacting live while we're there, but it would be a little different than this. I'm not sure exactly how to do that. So. I just got always these ideas. I do still have definitely a desire to start. My goal is, pray for me on this. My goal is to start putting up a song every week as well, recording a song and doing as good a job as I can with it and putting it on Facebook and YouTube and all that. So that's still one of my missions that I want to do. I feel like that would be great. I know that a lot of you guys, that's how you found me in the first place. Man. Seemed like there was something else too. I mean, I'm always having these ideas, but I'm trying to figure out things that are just going to be like, what can we do consistently over time? Speaking of consistent things, podcast this week. For those of you guys who are following the podcast, I'll let you in on a little secret. We have the last one that we did. Here's the thing about our podcast. Jack and I, when we sit down for the podcast, we probably talk for almost half an hour before we ever start recording. and then oftentimes we continue to talk after we record, and we just like the podcast is just a conversation between me and Jack, the pastor of the church that I work at, and we just sit down and we talk about stuff. And the one that I just posted, the podcast that came out on Tuesday, we actually left the mics on for the after part. And so there's a bonus podcast coming out tomorrow morning, first thing tomorrow morning. And all it is, it's like 12 minutes long, and it's just continuing the conversation. You're getting old enough for Post-it notes to remember things. I don't know what that means. I do know what it means because I forgot what I just said. I need a Post-it note. Good. So anyway, tomorrow we're going to have just kind of a bonus podcast coming out in between. So a Friday one. Maybe we'll do that again in the future because we feel like a lot of times our best stuff, our best stories, and our most natural conversation comes when we have no pressure that we're being recorded for a podcast. So check it out if you're interested in that. It's a short one too. It's 12 minutes long. Just to get a feel of what that is, especially if you haven't listened to any of those yet. Hey guys, we got a crew on here and they're waiting to get into the Bible, so we need to. So, chapter 5, verse 21, book of Mark. Good morning, Carrie Ann. And good, we got people on here. Awesome. So, chapter 5, book of Mark, open it up, verse 21. Let's pray. Lord, we are thankful. You're using your word to speak to lives, to change people. Lord, I know there are people on here, they haven't spent a lot of time in your book. And maybe at times it has been this thing that has been hard to understand, maybe a mystery. And Lord, as we're walking through it, you're opening their eyes, you're revealing things to them. You're showing them that it's understandable, and you're giving them a hunger for your word, a desire after your Son. Lord, we pray that you would do that again today. Would you just continue that work? We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So good to have you guys on. So here's the thing. We got, again, a lot of verses that we got to get through. This is all one big story. It's a really interesting story. If you've been around the Bible a little bit, you've heard this story, famous story. But we're going to, let's just kind of get into it quickly, a recap of where we're at. Jesus has been crossing over the sea on a boat and just going back and forth. He had just gone to this place where there was a demon-possessed man who met him. The demon-possessed man was super powered, super strong, and Jesus cast out the demons from him into a herd of pigs. The pigs jumped off a cliff after they were demon-possessed. Most amazing sight. I would have loved to see that on Instagram. I'm pretty sure that would have gone viral, gotten a few million views. 2,000 pigs jumping off of a cliff would have been incredible. And so we saw that. Now, when the pigs were killed, the people of the place, the people of the people who kept the pigs in that community, they asked Jesus to leave. They said, "Would you please get out of here?" Now, that's where we pick up, verse 21. And when Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a crowd gathered about him, and he was beside the sea. So here's a quick point that we're not going to sit on for too long. If you don't want Jesus in your life, he'll leave. That is a sad truth. He'll pursue you. He'll always be there when you turn back around, when you go after him, when you say, "Lord, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Please come, please be part of my life." He will always be there. He will never be at such a distance that you can't get back to him. But if you ask him, "Lord, I don't want you to have anything to do with this. I don't want you to be here. I don't want you to mess with my business. I don't want you to mess with my life. I don't want to have anything to do with this religious stuff." You will live your life in the natural, and that's, I guess, okay. I mean, if this is all you get, but he will. He'll just, okay, I'll get back in the boat and I'll go back to the other side. And it's you who will miss out. It's me who will miss out when we say, "Jesus, I don't want you to be part of this." When I was in high school, I said we weren't going to sit on this for very long, but we're gonna a little bit longer. So when I was in high school, I used to play basketball. This is super funny to think back on. I used to play basketball a lot, and I was on the team. I worked hard. I played a lot, and I remember I was a Christian. I grew up a Christian, and so when I would talk to the Lord about basketball, I would truly, I said, Lord, I don't want you to help me at basketball. I don't want you to help me. And the reason why I would say that is because I just had this belief that God could control everything. And I was like, Lord, I don't want you to help me because I don't want an unfair advantage. I don't want an unfair advantage over all of the other. I want to know that I earned it. I want to know that I did. And so what was the result of that? Well, I was a young white kid in a podunk town who did, I played great on a terrible, great. I played great for a white kid in a podunk town. And our team didn't win games, and I didn't have great numbers. And, my arm snapped in my junior year, and so I was out that year, and it wasn't glory for real. And it's like, it was truly, I don't know what would have happened if I was like, Lord, this is all you just do with it what you want, and I'll just kind of ride the wave. That's what it seems like Steph Curry does, if you know anything about basketball. So the guy just throws basketball. He just throws the ball up from half court, and it goes in like nobody else has ever done in the history of basketball. And he's just like, oh, it's the glory of God. So, so that's my story. But if you ask Jesus not to be part of it, man, that's what these guys did. We don't want to have you be part of this. On the other hand, this story is going to be about those who ask Jesus to be part of it. Verse 22, then came one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and seeing him, he fell at his feet and implored him earnestly, saying, my little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live. And he went with him. So we have this guy, Jairus is his name. What do we know about this guy? We know he's a ruler of a synagogue. So he's a religious leader. Good morning, Brenda. He's a religious leader. He runs a synagogue. He's respected in his community as a guy. This is an upstanding guy. He leads this. The synagogue would have been kind of like a church in their day. The way that the synagogues worked is if there were 10 Jewish men in a community, they would build a synagogue. If there were you had to have at least 10 Jewish men, and they would build a synagogue, and the synagogue was the place. This is where Jesus, at the beginning of his ministry, he would go, and they would have a teaching time in the synagogue, and Jesus would open the scriptures, he would expound the scriptures, and people could come in and they could listen to somebody expounding scriptures, just similar, I think, to what I'm doing. And so it wasn't denominationally based. Some people would disagree with other people. There would be more of an open forum of who is going to be speaking and teaching among the rabbis, especially if there was a traveling rabbi, they would open it up for the synagogues. So that's what this guy kind of ran this kind of organized religious thing. The fact that we know his name is Jairus. Not every story do we know their name. We don't know the name of the demon-possessed man that we just heard about. There's many people that we don't know their name, but the fact that we know Jairus' name is interesting to me, because that tells me he was famous. He had a reputation, like Nicodemus, who will come in John chapter 3. The fact that we know their name is significant. I think it's even as the gospel writers are writing the account, they're just like, oh, it's that guy Jairus, that religious leader. He's desperate. He's got a 12-year-old daughter, and she's sick to the point of death. I've thought about that. I have a daughter. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I've thought about, just what lengths would you go when that person that you love, especially, a daughter is somebody who, for her father, a young daughter is somebody who just says, you know what, the reason why I'm safe is because of my dad. A lot of, some of you may not have had that experience, but I know the ideal situation is a daughter and her dad. And that daughter feels safe because of her dad. The dad will protect her at any cost, fight any beast, and take care of his daughter. And here his daughter helplessly is dying. And the dad can do nothing. He can't fight somebody off. He can't. There's no solution to the problem, and so he becomes desperate. He hears about Jesus, and he goes to Jesus. And I've said it before. Man, if one of my kids was in this situation, I don't know the distance that I wouldn't go. You know, I'd start Googling, like, where are the miracles happening on the globe, right? I mean, you'd start looking around. You'd probably bounce around from church to church. Here's the truth of it. This may bother somebody, and that's cool. I live in kind of the more conservative, let's study the Bible type groups of Christians. You know, I'm a head guy a little bit too much. Let's learn some stuff. But I tell you this, and because of that, there's, you know, the more charismatic circles, the ones that, you know, that it's like, hey, we just all want to get together and speak in tongues and slain in the spirit and gold dust falling from the ceiling and all this kind of stuff. They, you know, a lot of that stuff just kind of weirds me out. You know, I'm just like, oh, that seems a little bit strange. I tell you what, those places would not be off limits to me. If my daughter is sick unto death, I want to go to people who believe in miracles. I want to go to people who believe Jesus can just touch you and heal you. And so here we have this synagogue leader, and he's just, you know, Jesus at this point is already making waves. Like the religious people, the synagogue leaders, the other synagogue leaders, the people who are the who's who of the Christian community or the Jewish community, they don't like Jesus. Jesus is kind of this like, what's he doing? He's not part of our circle. But here, when your 12-year-old daughter is sick to the point of death, your circle doesn't matter quite as much. You want to go where Jesus is moving. Even if he's only rumored to be moving, you're still going to check it out. You're still going to go, right? Or at least he is. So here, that's what we know about Jairus. Daughter's dying. He's part of that who's who crowd. He's going to Jesus, and he says, Jesus, come, lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live. In verse 24, and he went with him, and a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. So I love the fact that Jesus responded. I love the fact that Jesus says, okay, I'm going with you. I will. You know, pretty much every time Jesus responds, he goes with the one who's desperate to heal him. Then we keep going, verse 25. There was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years and who had suffered much under many physicians, and she spent all that she had and was no better, but rather grew worse. And she heard the reports about Jesus, and she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment, for she said, if I touch even his garments, I will be made well. And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. So who is this? Jesus is going with Jairus to his house, and as he's on his way, there's a crowd. What's Jesus going to do? Jesus is famous as well. There's a crowd pressing in, people bumping up against him. People want to be part, you know, hey, they want to take selfies with Jesus. They're getting as close as they can, holding their iPhones and you know, pressing in, it's me and Jesus, and making gang signs or whatever they do. And as they're walking with Jesus, there's this woman, and this woman she's sick. And she has had a discharge of blood, it says, for 12 years, the same length of time. I think this is no coincidence, even in God's economy and what he has done. It's no coincidence that this woman has been sick as long as the daughter has been alive. I don't know the implications of that. I don't know why God made that parallel in there. I don't. You can run with it any way you want to. But this woman's been sick for 12 years, and she's coming, and she's just saying, if I can just touch Jesus. Now, what do we know about this woman? First of all, we don't know her name. We never get to know her name. She's not part of the who's who. She's the who's she. Who is this woman? The synagogue probably hasn't been in this synagogue for 12 years. She's one that needs to, she's supposed to keep her distance. She's considered in their culture, because of her sickness, and according to their laws and customs, she is considered unclean. She can't go to the temple and worship. What else do we know? We know she's broke. We know she's poor. She has given everything she has to doctors to try to heal her. She has been nonstop thinking about this problem for 12 years. Her only goal is to be made well. But here's what's also kind of interesting. She hasn't given up. She hasn't given up. She has constantly stayed in this belief that I can be made well. If she gets money, she gives it to doctors. Please help me. But she doesn't get better. She gets worse. But then she hears about Jesus and she goes the distance and she says, you know what? Even though I'm not supposed to be in the crowd and I'm not supposed to be touching other people, I'm not only going to touch other people, I'm going to press through the crowd and I'm going to reach out and I'm going to touch Jesus. She doesn't ask Jesus for anything. She doesn't. Jairus, he's got faith, right? Jairus says, hey, Lord, come to my house. Lay your hands on my daughter. Heal my daughter. She doesn't ask Jesus for anything. She just says, if I can just touch his garment. If I can just touch the hem of his garment. I'm not sure if it said that in this one, the hem of his garment, but this same story is told in other Gospels, and it talks about touching the hem of, so this is just touching the garment. But this idea of the hem of the garment, the religious people, the big shots in their culture would broaden the hem of their garment. The garment it would represent just how amazing they were, how powerful they were, how spiritual they were. The hem of the garment, it was kind of like a general wearing all of his, badges and things. And you got your medals and the things that you've earned, and you walk around like, hey, I've done stuff, I'm important. Well, they had that at the hems of their garments. The hem of the garment was a big deal. It showed their authority. It showed their position. And now I don't think Jesus wore the general type of thing. He didn't wear the garment that these other people wore. But she, in her mind, as she looked toward Jesus, she recognized the hem of his garment was, this is a symbol of his authority. This is the symbol of his position. This is the symbol of his power. And if I could just reach out and touch it. And so in her mind, what is she doing? She's acknowledging his authority. She's acknowledging his power. She's acknowledging, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, I will be made well. I can just slip in, get a little miracle, slip out. Nobody will ever know. So she sneaks in, she reaches out, she touches his garment. Verse 29, and immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Verse 30, and Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, who touched my garments? So Jesus is being pressed, like the selfie guys. They're bumping up against him. And yet, as soon as she touches him, she's made well. And when she's made well, Jesus says, wait, who touched me? Who touched my garments? And his disciples said to him, you see the crowd pressing around you? And yet you say, who touched me? And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembled and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. So Jesus, he's calling her out. He's bringing her forward, not to embarrass her, but to acknowledge what has just happened. He's not here to, you get this sense in the beginning, and she comes with fear. You get this sense when he responds, when he heals her. You get this sense that he's just like, wait, what happened? Somebody stole my power. Somebody, that's not what happened. Jesus wanted to take it even further. He wanted to make contact with the woman, not just, as she reaches out. There's this humility that she has as she reaches out. She says, I don't even need to bother him. He's powerful enough. I don't even need to bother Jesus. I just need to reach out and touch his garment and I'll be made well. And she does it and she gets healed and she's like, okay, now I can leave. Jesus pursues her. Jesus goes after her. No, who are you? Who touched me? I want to be face to face with you. I want to tell you who you are. I want to let you know that you have value. Isn't it a big deal? Isn't it a big deal? I mean, I don't know if you've ever, I haven't met a lot of celebrities, but you meet somebody that you look up to, and most of the time you're just like, oh, I want to get a picture with this person, or I want to meet this person. Here's an example. There's a pastor, I talk about him from time to time, John Corson, and I love the guy. He teaches the Bible. You look him up, johncorson.com, and he's taught every verse of the Bible, and you can find video and audio of it on his website. But anyway, one time we were at a conference a long time ago, and me and a pastor that I worked for, and we were walking into the conference, and John was walking into the conference, and my friend was saying, hey, I really want to ask John a question. And so, and it was just us. We were late. He was late. And we stopped, and he asked him, he says, hey, John, I want to ask you a question. And it was just this kind of like, we were going to ask the question on the journey. We were going to ask the question going into the sanctuary where there was going to be somebody teaching. And John, you know, I was surprised by this. John stopped. He stopped walking, and he turned to us, and he engaged us in conversation, although he was already late. He valued this moment where we were asking him questions. He valued this time with us and made us feel like, hey, we're more than just fans in a sense, you know. And I feel like Jesus wants to show us that he values us. And with this woman, he's just like, no, I don't just want to do miracles for people. I want to interact with people. I want to know people. I want to touch people and show them that I love them. And I think that that's the case so often when we are coming close to God, when we're worshiping God. So often we're just like, Lord, I'm just happy to experience the blessings that you have. But Jesus wants more than that. He wants that relationship, and he will call you out. Who touched me? Who is it that's reaching out? And he says, daughter, your faith has made you well. I love that. We got to keep trucking. We got a lot still left here. So I think some big things. Verse 35, while he was still speaking, there came from the ruler's house some who said, your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further? But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, do not fear, only believe. Does it ever... Now, you can imagine Jairus at this point, right? He has the greater need, I think. His daughter is in the ER. His daughter is she's on life support. This thing is going down fast. And Jesus stops and he begins to interact with this woman. And it you know, like, okay, really? She's gone 12 years. Can't she go 12 years in like 6 more hours? Can't we just get to where we need to be to heal my daughter? Does it ever feel like to you that when you're waiting on God to do the thing that you're asking him for, when you're just pleading, Lord, please, I have such need for you to interact. And what do you see during that waiting time, that gap time? So often you look out and you start seeing God working in everybody else's life, right? You're like, man, that other person at your church or that person in your small group is like, man, God's been doing amazing things. I got this blessing and this blessing and this blessing and they're just talking about how God's doing so much. And you're still on the journey. You're still on your way home to have Jesus lay his hands on the daughter, right? You're still waiting. And that's so often God will allow there to be that gap where you get to see him doing things in other people's lives, and yet you're still just desperate. And as a matter of fact, in this case, it seems like things got much, much worse because she was sick, but now they're saying she has died. In the journey, you're still on your way. It's like, Lord, I need you. I need you to interact. I need you to help me. I need you to heal. I need you to move. And during that time, you're seeing this woman, big smile on her face. God's healed me. God's done something awesome in my life. And then Jesus says, no, don't fear. Keep believing. That's literally what it says in the original. It's not only believe, but it's keep on believing. Keep on believing. Keep setting your sights on what it is that you're asking for. Keep on asking. Keep on walking. Keep on moving. Don't give up. And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter. He allowed no one to follow him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. And they came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue. And Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. Now, in their day, this was kind of customary. They had professionals that would come in and cry. They would come in and weep and mourn and create a mood. Today, I think we kind of do the same thing. You know, you go to a memorial service, and we don't have professional criers, but oftentimes they'll have somebody come in and sing a sad song at a memorial service or something like that. And, you know, you definitely want to set the mood. You know, you don't want to show up at a funeral and they're not going to hire a stand-up comic. You know, you definitely want the appropriate mood. And so that's what these people do. They come and they would set the mood of sad. And so here they are, they're weeping, they're wailing, they're you know, as a matter of fact, the Bible tells us to weep with those who weep. And so even though this was kind of a professional responsibility of these wailers and weepers, what they were doing wasn't necessarily bad. They were just kind of doing their role of a little girl who had just died. In verse 39, and when he had entered, he said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Here, Jesus, listen, Jesus just came into a funeral, and he basically is a stand-up comic at the funeral. He has the inappropriate response, the insensitive response. Jesus comes in. What are you guys crying about? She's not dead. She's sleeping. Only Jesus knows that this is going to turn into rejoicing. But in this moment, these people are just like, okay, get this guy out of here. This is inappropriate. Verse 40, and they laughed at him, but he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in to where the child was. And taking her by the hand, he said to her, Talitha Kumai, which means, little girl, I say to you, arise. Immediately the girl got up and began walking, for she was 12 years of age. And they were immediately overcome with amazement. And then it says, and he strictly charged them that no one should know this. That's kind of Jesus' thing. That's what he does. He's like, don't go spreading this around. I've already got too many people just following me for the reasons of, hey, we just want you to heal us. And Jesus was coming for a bigger purpose than that. And he says, and then he told them to give her something to eat, which is amazing. So Jesus goes and he heals this little girl. He raises her from the dead, gives her back to her family. Man, I can't even imagine, I can't even imagine the joy that they felt in this moment, this belief, this faith, this, embracing, hey, Jesus loves us. Jesus moved on our behalf. Here's an interesting point I like, that he put out the mockers. Man, you're pressing in toward Jesus, and there's always mockers. There's always somebody who will tell you why it can't be done. You know what? If you've ever been one to set a goal, I'm going to set a goal. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to reach this level. I'm going to, anything. I'm going to do this. There's always somebody who's going to come along, and most often it's even going to be somebody close to you. They're going to come along and they're going to tell you why it can't be done. They're just, hey, this is the way it is. The child has died. This is, this is over. You're not going to get to that point. There's always somebody who's going to tell you why it can't be done. There's always going to be somebody who's going to remind you of how life works. And they're going to really hold back what God could do in your life. I think we do it naturally. I think we do it to one another. I think I do it with my wife, and my wife does it with me. I think I do it with my brothers, and they do it with me. I think my mom, and she's done it with me. That you get this idea, and maybe it's from God, maybe it's not from God, but you get this idea, and just naturally we like to bring up all the practical parts. Well, hey, people who die don't raise from the dead, so that can't happen. And when we're walking after Jesus, we need to understand that when God calls something, when God says something, when he says he's going to do something, that is the thing that makes it possible. It's the fact that he said that it's going to happen. And so anything is possible if he says it's going to happen. And so as he puts those things on our hearts, we just keep on walking after him. Even though it seems at times that we're getting further and further away from the destination, that we start out with a sick daughter and we end up with a dead daughter, but in the end we have a healthy daughter. Now, we need to keep walking after that, because we are going to have mockers in our midst always. That's just part of the journey. And it's a natural thing. It is a natural thing to, like I do it. I'll use myself as an example. My wife may have an idea of something she wants to do, and then I just start kind of laying out, well, if you do that, then this has got to happen, and that's got to happen, and I try to make it real and practical, and let's work through all the details of it, and it kind of ends up with, yeah, you're right, that's not even actually possible. Let's not even pursue it. Often, here's the thing, for the thing to happen, sometimes the mockers have to be put out. I had a friend a long time ago, again, basketball story. He was a basketball player, a lot younger than me, so we didn't play together. His name was Adam. And Adam had his knee, something was really messed up with his knee, and as he was playing, it was really aggravating him. It was making him, just wasn't, he was a high school kid at the time, and he was going to this youth group where, it's a Pentecostal youth group, Assemblies of God Church, and these, they were not, it was not the group that I was most comfortable with, let's put it that way. But they believed God did miracles. And he told me one time, he said he was there, and the youth pastor was there, and Adam came up and he said, man, my knee's been acting up, and I really need prayer that God would heal my knee. And Toby, the youth pastor, still a good friend of mine, he basically said, hey, if you do not believe that God's going to heal Adam's knee, would you please leave the room? He kicked them all out. He's just, if you're part of this youth group and you don't believe God's going to heal his knee, would you just go ahead and leave the room? Because we're going to pray that God heals his knee. And Adam's just like, man, I don't know what. I never had any knee issues with that knee the rest of the season while I was playing basketball. God healed his knee. God did a work in his life. But it was interesting. He made note of the fact that Toby, his youth pastor, did this very thing. He's like, kicked them all out. Get the mockers out of the room. Get the unbelief out of the room. Let's keep our focus on the fact that God is powerful, God can heal, and we're going to ask him to do the work. That's just that sometimes you just got to get away from the mockers. And then the very last thing we're going to talk about, because we're already over time, he charged them to tell no one, and then it says, and he told them to give her something to eat. John Corson said at the end of this message, he said, man, God's supernatural works never supersede just natural care, common sense care. Just give her some food. Yes, God just rose her from the dead. Now feed her. Give her some food. Do the practical. Do the real life stuff. She still needs food. God so often will work through the natural, just feeding those that need food, clothing those who are cold, blessing those who are in need. James warns us about being those people who would go and say to the people who are cold and hungry, hey, be warmed and filled, God bless you. And that's all we do. We leave it all in the supernatural realm, and we never meet the real common sense need. And here Jesus is telling them, now feed your daughter, feed her, take care of the practical stuff as well. I think that's awesome. So, hey guys, tomorrow we get into chapter 6. And I hope you'll join me. So blessed. I get encouraged by you guys coming on every single morning. And there have been like 30 people on here every day. And that's like a magic number for me. I know it's not, it just blows my mind that God would use that. So here's how it's happening, if you care. I do. I just pay attention to this stuff. The amount of people watching this thing throughout the day is decreasing. Which is just fine. But the amount of people watching it live seems to be increasing nice and slowly. And so I thank you guys for getting up in the morning and being part of this with me. Just continue to press into the Lord. Any thoughts that you have as God, shares thoughts with you about what we've talked about or whatever. I love hearing from you guys. Got some emails yesterday. Got an email from Adam, and just how God's working in his life through this kind of stuff. Judy, Veslis, you posted on the page. I appreciate that. Darren, as always, I just so am encouraged by you guys just sharing how God's using what we're doing here. So just continue to do that. That's the part that makes this interactive, where it's not just a talking head and me talking to myself, but truly that I know that I'm talking to you guys. So love doing this, and I've got a long-term vision. In the beginning, if you go back and watch the first ones that we did, you'll see I was kind of like, we'll see where this goes. I'm really hopeful that we can just keep on going. So thank you guys. God bless you, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.